Hello, this is Gorgnak, and I'm here to bring you part 2 of Redstone Basics. In this one, we are going to be covering Redstone mechanics and some Redstone utility. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to go over is this Redstone repeater. It has 4 functions. The first one is delaying a signal, and we're going to go over that here. So if you take a look, once you place down a repeater, the back will face towards you and the front will face away from you, and you feed the signal in through the back and it goes out the front. And you can kind of see that this looks like an arrow right here, so that's kind of what you can use. The signal goes out the back and follows the arrow along. Okay, so if you right click the redstone repeater, this little rod moves back, and what that does is it increases the delay of the signal the farther back the rod goes. So if you take a look, all these ones on the right are the closest, or the most forward, and these ones are the most back. So when we flip the signal on, you can see that the right signal makes it to the repeater way before the left one, and that's because the left one has a longer delay on it. The second function of the redstone repeater is that it allows you to push signals through blocks. So this redstone repeater is right up against this block, and it pushes the redstone signal through, as opposed to this one, which it tries to feed it through, but it can't because the block stops it. The third function of this is that this is called a redstone repeater, and that's what it does right here. It repeats the signal. So if the signal is at 1 strength right here, because it's 15 blocks away from its power source, it'll refresh the signal and bring it up to its full power. And as you can see, it can make it to this redstone lamp all the way over here. And then the last function of the redstone repeater is that it acts as one-way passage. Anything that goes out through the back can leave through the front, but if it tries to go through the front, it won't make it out the back. So, okay, so let's go over here and talk about the comparator. So when you place it down, again, the back is facing towards you and the front is facing away. Signals go in the back and out the front, not the other way around. And if you right click it, it turns on and off. We'll go over what that means in a second. Signals can also enter from the left and the right, as you can see right here. Alrighty, so if the light is off, it does signal canceling. So if the signal on either side is greater than the signal coming back or coming into it, then it'll cancel the signal. So right now that's 3 back. So if I turn this on, it'll cut power to the entire system. Alright, and then if I do it over here, it does the same thing. It doesn't matter which side it goes in, but either side would have to be greater. You can't have one you can't have both of them be less, otherwise it won't work at all. So, okay, and then the other function of this, once you turn the light on, it does signal reducing. So right now, this has a signal of 14 going into it. So if I wanted to make the signal length, let's see here, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, it should only be 4 long. Yep, that's correct, because 14 minus 10 will give you a signal strength of 4. Now, when it comes to the signals entering in on either side, it matters which one is stronger between them. You don't add them up or anything like that. So since this one is a little stronger than that one, it tends to cut it off sooner. Alrighty then. 13, 12, yep. Okie dokie. The other function of the comparator is that it can basically read, 1 second, it can basically turn certain objects into inputs themselves. And I have several examples, but this one over here is the most useful, but I'm going to go with the least useful first. This one reads how much of the cake is left. So if you start eating up the cake, you can see the signal dying a little bit. Eventually, the signal kind of gets cut out. And so if I type in cake, place it down. Yeah, I think it's a little weird, but alrighty. This is the composter, and I'm sure you probably know what it does. And so the signal will read how full the composter itself is. I mean, I've never used this function. Don't really know why anyone would. This one, the item frame, if you right click the item on the item frame, it'll rotate, and depending on its position is how much juice it gets. And this one can only give you 8 signal strength. This one is what page of the lectern you're on. And so now we're on page 8 and the signal's on. We start turning it back. I mean, it could be interesting, I guess. Again, maybe use it as a puzzle. And then this one is actually the most useful, is how full a container is. So I'm going to start throwing some diamond swords, and you can see the signal getting farther and farther away until it finally gets there. Okay, now the thing is about this is it's how full is each stack. So 64 of these levers is the same as 1 diamond sword. All right, so keep that in mind when I mean how full is the space that would need to be completely occupied for it to have the same effect as this diamond sword. So 64 dirt, 64 stone would all have to be in there. That's actually a pretty useful function. It's probably the one people use the most. And this works on basically any container that stores items, chests, barrels, hoppers, dispensers, you name it. Okie dokie. So let's mosey on into some redstone behavior. Things that you can and can't do with redstone that are particularly useful. The first thing you can do is if you power a block with a redstone torch on it, the redstone torch will turn on and off. All right, it does have some useful functions, and I would have to explain it, maybe like some logic gates. You're probably better off seeing the super specifics in actual devices, like some I have over there. Anyway, so another thing is, let's say this block is powered. It'll turn off the redstone above it. It's basically an alternating sequence because this redstone torch is powering this block. This one doesn't have any power, and then this is powering that block, which turns on the light. It's one way to basically push your redstone signal up in a very compact manner. So it's off, it's on, and you notice that the lights alternate every time. Okie dokie. And then if you want to push a redstone signal down, you basically, there's no real quick, easy way to do it. You kind of have to spiral it down like this in order for the signal to go down. It's a lot more of a pain, but it is what it is. Okay, so if you wanted to try and power a redstone torch like this on the ground, it doesn't work because I believe this block needs to be powered. I think it's just a weird how it works. I think the block needs to be directly powered in order for a redstone signal or a redstone torch to turn off by it. Kind of like this. This is a redstone block. Since the power is directly underneath it, it turns off the torch. Okie dokie. So one of the things that it does is once you power a block, it typically powers blocks adjacent to it. So if you take a look, since this block is powered, so if you put it right here, this will be powered because this guy powers the adjacent blocks, and then it powers the adjacent blocks. You can kind of see that as well right here. Since this is running directly into this redstone lamp right here, it powers the blocks that are adjacent to it, including the one behind it. All right, redstone lamp. Okie dokie. So redstone torches typically power blocks that are adjacent to it, not ones underneath it though. So again, It'll also power blocks above it too. So if you take a look, it only powers the block above it, but since that block happens to be receiving power, it also powers the adjacent blocks. Let's see here. This redstone block does the same thing as the redstone torch, but also does the one underneath it as well, but yet it doesn't have that kind of bleed through that you're seeing here on this blocks. It only does the adjacent blocks only. It's kind of like it only powers itself. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so in terms of powering redstone, it needs to be on the same level as the redstone torch. Even though this block is getting juice, redstone won't go through it. It's just how it is. Even though, no, I guess it doesn't power the block directly above it. Yeah, that would be why. So since it doesn't power the block directly above it, it doesn't receive any juice. So in order for it to get its power, it needs to be directly adjacent. It can't be one below or one above while being next to it. However, I guess, again, same thing here, not on the same level. However, you can provide power to redstone if it's directly under a block which the redstone torch is powering, kind of like this. It can go up. Basically, how you can't get the power here, but if you place it down one more, you will get it. And then it also works as well if you power the block above it and then connect the redstone to the block. All right. So moving redstone, you can move redstone up and down blocks. And in order for that to happen, you need... I just want to try something. So, you need some kind of space there. All right. And transparent blocks also do the same thing. So you either need space, or I believe it's called a transparent block like glass. However, if you block it off with a solid block like this, it cuts off the redstone signal and you can't go down anymore. So that's something that you need to keep in mind when going up and down. You can either use the slab on the upper part or a transparent block, otherwise you won't get the signal through. All right, and when it comes to feeding redstone into a repeater, again, it needs to be on the same level. Otherwise, like if you take a look right here or here, you see that the repeater doesn't get powered. And then, since the repeater powers this block directly, it can also power the one above it. So it goes on and on. And then I guess the last thing I should go on, or last thing I should say, is relating to, so if you want to power a redstone block on the same level as the redstone, you cannot have these bend at all. It needs to directly feed into whatever you are powering. All right, and there are a couple ways you can bypass this. I want to see if lightning turned on the lightning rod. Anyway, you can either push the redstone down a block, so it's powering this block and the one next to it, or you can use repeaters, which then power these blocks. And then with how the repeaters are and powering this block directly, you don't actually need them spaced, right next to each other. You can. I like the way it looks when they're all like that. Alrighty then. I believe that is everything on Redstone Basics Part 2. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And goodbye.